Awesome. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Perilous Live Theater. We're here in the Apparel Zone at Printing United Expo 2024. You are here for a presentation about direct to film, obviously, a big industry disruptor right now. So, we're going to bring Rob from American Print and Supply to come talk to you about DTF, the print shop multi tool. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Cassie. All right, let's see. Is that too close to my face? There we go. That's a little better. All right, so thanks for coming by this afternoon. So I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to chime in or raise your hand. Um, Really, I want to kind of walk through a few things. I know everyone's skill levels are probably a little different in regards to DTF. So we're going to start with some basics. Then we're going to get into some costing. And then we have a pretty cool case study with a customer of ours that was a high volume DTG printer. And they went to DTF, and we're going to talk through some of that, like some of the savings that they saw on that and the production capacity increases. So it's a pretty interesting case study. And the point's not to say that DTG is a worse technology. It's just saying that there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and we believe that the DTF is the multi-tool of the toolbox. And then just a little background, American Print Supply is our company. We're just over here in the apparel zone. If you want to come see some equipment and do some hands-on interaction after transfers you can press, and we'd be happy to walk you through anything after the presentation here. See if I can get this guy to go. Technical difficulties. All right, I think we got it. Cool. All right, so there was supposed to be two of us up here, and he just hung me out to dry here. We had a double booking, and now it's just me. So I'm Rob, I'm the president. I've got some of the background. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but just kind of instill, I have a manufacturing background for a Fortune 50 logistics company. I did a lot of robotics, engineering design for workflows, assembly lines, building big yellow tractors. So I did that for a number of years. Then along the way, I got into e-commerce all the way back in 2014 when Shopify was first coming out. So I've got a pretty good history of understanding e-commerce and the workflow that goes into that. And then I started a cut and sew factory in Peoria, Illinois, to help supplement some of the e-commerce stuff we were doing. So we focused on-demand cut and sew manufacturing. So a jersey just like this came out of Peoria, Illinois. I'm really passionate about making things in the United States, keeping jobs here, making a high quality product. So we really did that for a number of years. And then, I explored some of the digital technologies. I'm a digital guy by nature. I just love the digital aspect. Whatever's in my head, I want to be able to put to a canvas. So that led me down the path of searching for the next technology. I mean, dye sublimation is great, but it also has a lot of barriers to entry. And there's some good videos on YouTube. There's one by the Deco Network we did together that talks about that a little bit. You should check it out if you're interested in learning more about that. But when DTF first came out, it was like, oh, this is it, because it's the bridge between the analog and the digital that I was searching for. So it's like taking the best of screen print, but making it a digital process, and that's what got me super excited. This was 3+ years ago. It was the Wild West. There wasn't a lot of information out about it, and it's evolved tremendously since then. But for me, it was like a paradigm shift. I'm like, this is the future. The amount of, and we'll get into some of the pros and cons of it here in a minute. But it absolutely changes the outlook on how you can do embellishment in a small to medium to large shop. And then Sean, who's supposed to be up with me here, he 20+ years in digital printer sales and support. There we go. I guess I should point this way when I'm trying to do that. All right, so the DTF, we believe, it's a powerful tool, and we believe is the multi-tool. And what does that mean? It's the most versatile tool that any single embellishment shop could have in their toolbox. There's a lot of other tools you should have, but we believe that if you're going to invest in one technology, this is the technology to invest in. Is this cutting in and out, or is that just me? Test, test. Yeah, I'll keep going. Is there like a battery or anything? Is that still good? Okay. Yeah, the mic. Hello? Hello? Well, just like running a business, sometimes you have to solve problems. So, new microphone it is. Um, let's talk about some of the basics of DTF and the core components. So, let's start with the printer. Most of the models you see out there right now are come in 2, 4 head, now even 6 head configurations. Uh, Kind of the industry standard right now is an Epson i3200 print head, which is a super robust and durable print head. And it's like the crate engine, for a drag car, right? Take this i3200 print head and put it in your printer. It's an extremely durable and high quality print head that's really great for the DTF market. Typically, we see CMYK configuration. So what does that mean? That's the 4 color spectrums you see. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that's plus a white. So the W stands for white in this instance. So on a typical setup with a 2-head configuration, you're going to have one print head that prints cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And then you're going to have one print head dedicated to white. So if that print head has 4 channels within it, all 4 channels are going to be printing white. On the color print head, each channel is a specific color. Now we're even playing around with expanded gamuts, so you can look at things like red, green, blue, and orange, so an even bigger color gamut, which we can talk about in a little bit, or you can even do fluorescence. But outside of that, we have small format, so a 17-inch and under would be a small format, so 17 inches in A2 size. Small shop that does primarily apparel, that might be a good option for you. It's really good, efficient use of the space on the film. So if I'm doing a 12 by 13 inch logo, it uses the film consumption very nicely on a 17-inch film. Then we can go to 24-inch and above. 24-inch all the way up to 48-inch plus. I've even seen some 60 or 64-inch machines out there. And it really depends on your needs and what makes the most sense for you. But I would say primarily most machines you see nowadays are 24-inch, and that's pretty much the standard. Outside of the printer, we have a thing called a duster. So this is a key differentiation from a lot of the other digital technologies is you have another component to it. And so the duster is actually taking that printed transfer that's coming off the printer and applying the powder, which eventually becomes the adhesive. So what's going to happen is we're going to digitally print our transfer. We're going to put our color down, so the CMYK, and then we're going to put a white underbase under all the color. So the reason we do that is when it goes into the powder chamber, the powder is actually going to bond with the white ink. So the titanium dioxide and the white ink is going to bond with that powder, and then it's going to go through a cure tunnel. So just like baking a pizza, we're going to send that transfer through the cure tunnel with our powder on it, and that's when it's eventually going to become the adhesive, which transfers to our substrate. On a typical oven, we usually have a take-up reel on the back side of it, and so this is so we can run long transfers and then use a take-up reel to take it up, and we don't have a bunch of film dumping out onto the floor. And then the third critical component, and this is arguably one of the most critical pieces, is your RIP, and that's raster imaging processing. So what this does is it takes our digital image and translate that into a file that can then be interpreted by the printer. So it's going to take our digital spectrum, which is RGB, red, green, blue, and convert that into a CMYK format, which can then be printed by the printer. Another critical component is a white underbase. So we need to actually be able to apply the information to that RIP file to have a white underbase. And what the white underbase, again, if you remember, that's where the powder is going to adhere to that. So if we printed without a white underbase, you're not going to get a transfer that sticks because there's not going to be any powder on it. Another thing to keep in mind with the white underbase is a thing called a choke. And the choke is the amount of pixels we're going to choke in from our color. So if you have a printer, if you've ever seen a bad DTF transfer and you see some ghosting or some white poking out, that's generally 2 things: not enough choke or bad registration, meaning the print heads aren't aligned. So you got to be very cognizant of that. In our shop, we check alignments every day at the startup and shut down, even sometimes during midday if we're running really hard. One thing to consider with the choke process, if you choke something too much, let's just say I choke 7 pixels and I have a 7-pixel font, there's a good chance you might erode that portion of the design, and then you no longer have that visible on the printed transfer. So you have to keep that in mind. So again, registration and alignments are key. So if you have a clearly aligned printer, your choke can be all the way down to 0. Some other things you can do with a good raster image processing software is spot colors. So let's just say I had a really interesting color I needed to hit for a client. I can take a little device called a spectrophotometer. I can scan that color, translate that information through the RIP, and say, okay, this is what you output. Let me scan. I'm trying to hit this color, and it will try to interpret the information as best as possible to hit that color. So it's really useful in instances where you have a customer that just needs a specific color, and you can scan it and get as close as humanly possible with the CMYK spectrum. Some other things you can do resizing, editing, quantities. Let's just say I had one single image and I wanted to duplicate it a bunch of times. Most RIP softwares, you can do that very easily. Some even have things called like knock me out black. So let's just say I had a really heavy black design that was going on a black t-shirt. Rather than printing that black ink, let's just go ahead and blow that out. So you can do that in the software. Remove the black ink and then print the design without the black, and then the black of the shirt shows through. So it makes a really cool finished product. And we'll get into that here in a little bit as far as influencing the finished product, the hand feel, and catering to the technology. Any questions or anything so far? Okay. All right, and I guess down here at the bottom too, let's cover some of this. Finding the right team, I think that's more important than just the machine alone. You got to look at the team that's standing behind it, and are they going to be there to support you when you need help, especially if you're new to the digital world. You're going to have questions along the way. Even post-installation, there's always going to be questions that pop up. So really find a team that resonates with you, is going to stand behind the product and support you. Small business needs to stick together and help each other out. So look for a team that's going to align with those types of ideals. Another thing, specifically with us, we use the technology. We're end users. I told you a little bit about my history, dating back 10 plus years. We're in the trenches. We understand the challenges of manufacturing. So you want to find a team that understands that and is, again, there to support you in the long run. Also, a recipe. So I'm very stringent about this. We don't change anything without rigorous testing, and then it's a communication process, and that takes months, if not years, to do. So once you have a formula that works, and we've been working on this for 3 years, we stick to that recipe. We're not going to change it on you, and we're going to continue to do so until we find the next greatest thing, and it's going to be a rollout process. So you want a supplier that's going to stick behind that and say, hey, this is the recipe, this is what works. Don't deviate from it, and your quality and consistency is going to stay where it needs to be. All right, so some of the basic supplies. We're going to start with the film. So this is probably one of the core components of DTF. There's a couple different varieties out there, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard the different, hot or cold peel. That's simply the peeling of the release when you do the heat press. In the old days, 3+ years ago, cold peel was the standard, and that's simply because the hot peel releasing the ink from the film when you press it wasn't very consistent. So you'd get a lot of times the edges would pull up or it'd snag. The design would end up being ruined, and then you just trashed your shirt. So 3 years ago, cold peel was the standard. Now the hot peel coatings have gotten really good. So I would say primarily you would want to look for a hot peel film. There's a couple things on top of that you need to look for. Single-sided and double-sided. What does that mean, Rob? Well, the single-sided coating has the coating that releases the ink that you print on one side. Well, I only print on one side of the film, Rob. Why would I need a double-sided film? Well, that double-sided film is same consistency on both sides. So as that film's feeding through on a single-sided film, your pinch rollers could be slipping because one side has the coating, the second side does not. So if I'm feeding film through my pinch rollers and we're only talking about microns to be off, my choke and my registration could come into play because as it's feeding through the roll on 323 feet, it might change along the way because it's slipping, just micro adjustments along the way. So we've found that a double-sided coating, although it's a couple dollars more expensive, it is way more consistent and reliable than a single-sided film. And it's simply because the surface of it slips on the pinch rollers. Typically, it's measured in microns too, and almost everyone's using a 75 micron. There's really no reason to deviate from that. And the white ink, this one's obviously, we get a lot of questions on this, head clogs and things like that. So you want to stick to a really high quality white ink that doesn't get separation. All inks have pigments in them, and especially with the white, has titanium dioxide. So with time, that dries and hardens. So we want to find a really good, high-quality white ink that's not going to do that, overnight. We've all heard horror stories of somebody leaving their printer for a couple days, they come back, and now I just destroyed a print head. Most of these machines are going to have circulation on them, so they're going to circulate the white ink through, and that helps keep things fluid. And then also the opacity, that's really important. So think about our white underbase going on all of our color. If we have a poor opacity in our white ink, it's going to bleed through on the finished product. So if I have a dark design and I have some bright colors on it and I have a poor white opacity, that bleed throughs of the shirt is actually going to come through and it's going to change the color of the finished product. So super critical, along with the powder we'll talk about here in a second. And then the color inks, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are pretty much the common colors. We do have some expanded gamut things coming out, so red, green, blue, orange, and of course fluorescent, red, green, yellow, and orange. One thing to note on the fluorescents, those are typically spot colors. So it's a little different than, CMYK and RGBO. Now onto the powder. So a couple different common types. There's a TPU or a polyester. This is generally measured in microns, and this influences a lot of things. Of course, it's first and foremost, it's the adhesive, so getting that print to stick to the substrate. But it's also going to influence the stretchability, the hand feel, and the washability. So if you have a poorly cured powdered transfer, it might wash out after a couple washes. So a good high quality powder is super critical. Small microns might feel a little better in a hand feel, but if you've ever been into a shop that runs a really small micron, let's say under 80 microns, if you just look at it, it's up in the air and it's all over the place. So it just looks like there's flour all over the place in your print lab, and that's because they're using a really small micron. I would recommend a blended average of 80 to 200. It kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It's got some small particles and some larger particles. And then other things to consider too is make sure the product you're using is OKO-Tech certified. Especially the powder. You don't want to be breathing or touching this stuff if you don't know what's going in it. So look for a good quality certification. Any reputable suppliers should have those on file to be able to give you. So I would ask for those up front. Hey, I want my stuff to be OKO-Tech certified or some of the other certifications out there. Just like anything, there's good, better, and best. I would say, keynote is not all supplies are created equal. Cheaper isn't always better. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a quality supplier. Garbage in, garbage out. So you want something that's going to stay consistent, not change with time, especially your colors, right? If I get a batch of magenta in, 2 months later, order the same thing, well, that batch of magenta might just be a couple shades off. Now all of a sudden, my customer that's ordering the same design from me over and over again, it's different. So we want to make sure we're sticking with good quality supplies that aren't going to drift with time. Yeah, and I think I covered mostly everything on here. So any question on supplies or anything like that? Yes. Yeah.
We have a 3200 Epson head, and we want to switch our ink. So we have that's what we've been here doing, looking for um, good quality ink. Is there anyone that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's a lot of good suppliers here, absolutely. I don't want this to be a sales pitch about myself or the company here. You can welcome to come talk to us afterwards, and we can talk you through that. I would say, there's several others you can walk around and talk to, and we can give some recommendations, after the presentation here. But also, more importantly, I'd say if you're going to look to switch, make sure you flush it completely, because some of these inks, when you cross-contaminate them, they create like a concrete mixer, and then you just destroyed your entire ink delivery system. Yes, sir.
Hello? Good? Or no? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I wanted to change a certain supply, like I want to change the powder. Do I need to go and get brand new inks and new film to match the powder, or do I just need to find the right mix for everything, or do I need to start over with everything?
Yes and no. The powder can influence a lot of different things, and depending, well, like we talked about with the recipe, if that powder doesn't match with the recipe, you could have some bad results. So I'd say definitely lean on people that are experienced in that. Talk to them about, hey, this is what I'm using. What do you think my results are going to be? And it might take some trial and error. Um, My personal recommendation would be to find somebody that offers you the full spectrum. Say, hey, we got the inks, film, and powder that all work together, and kind of stick to that. Okay. All right, so let's talk about some of the reasons why DTF is so compelling. Like we talked about, it's a bridge between analog and digital. So it's a completely digital process, short to medium to large runs. So it's really great for anything on demand. And yes, that's Myra here in the video. Lovely assistant here, thank you. Great for on demand, so I can do one-offs. I can do 100 one-offs in the same production as I could do 100 of the same image. So it's really great for short runs. It's also good for medium-sized runs and even large runs now. And that's what we're going to get into here with this case study. I have a client that did 22,000 piece order, which would almost historically always been screen print, and they actually went DTF on it. It wasn't even that many colors. That's one of the big things about digital, right? I don't have screens for every color that I have, like on a screen press. But it was like a 3-color job, and they still decided to do DTF because they really worked out the workflow, and they were able to actually beat their screen print setup with the DTF. Virtually unlimited substrate. So what do I mean by that? Almost anything that can withstand heat in a heat press, you're going to be able to transfer to. So cottons, polyesters, tri-blends. Some of the cool things, again, if you want to step over in the zone here and check it out, we're printing and pressing onto wood, and then we're cutting it out with an epilog laser. We have some registration, some fiduciary registration, and then it's reading that in the laser and cutting it out. So we made these cool little wood trinkets that were DTF printed, pressed, and then cut out. It's a pretty cool setup. We've even done some things like acrylic and things like that actually hold up pretty well and look really cool. So there's a lot of really interesting things. Leather you could press on. I have a customer that does sandals, and they do high volume of sandals, and we're primarily doing that UV until they switch to DTF, and it's a pretty cool process, a better product, and it's virtually indestructible. High ROI, so return on investment. The ability to do so many different things, and when we talk about pricing with these machines and the cost per square foot and your labor, it has an extremely fast return on investment, unlike any other equipment I've ever seen. And that's why this market's just taking off so fast, is because it's extremely lucrative along the way, and the whole ecosystem, there's a lot of room for everyone to make money. You could just be a person that prints transfers and sends them to someone. They could take those transfers and decorate on it and then sell it to their customers and still make good margin on it. I even have customers that buy transfers from some of my customers. Those customers resell those transfers to someone, and then that person's doing a finished product and still making very good margin on it. So there's a lot of room for margin along the supply chain and the whole ecosystem, and that makes it super compelling. Compact footprint. When you look at the ability and the output of some of these machines, it's really not a lot of space. So with a printer and a couple heat presses, let's say a 20 by 20, you can have a pretty high production micro factory. Another thing is extreme washability. We did some ANSI testing a number of years ago. 50 plus washes passed with flying colors. They basically threw in a giant torture chamber and ran it for a set number of hours and destroyed it. And I think it got second from highest remarks. So other than like dye sublimation, it's probably the best for washability out there. There's no pre-treat or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about washing it out after 10 washes. It's also a simple application. So you can see here in the video, heat press is really the only tool you need, anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds, even sometimes as low as 3 to 5 seconds, depending on the substrate. Pop it in there, pull it down. You're generally in that 300 degree range, anywhere from 275 to 300, depending on the substrate and the film and the entire recipe. Once you pull it out, it's a finished product, and you can even do a finish hit to influence the hand feel. So we like to use a textured Teflon, and that's really good for giving it kind of a knockdown and also a better hand feel at the end of the day. Any questions? Okay. I think I broke it. Or we can just keep showing the video of Myra here. So that concludes the presentation. We'll just show this on loop for the next 30 minutes. There we go. All right, so things to consider. I wouldn't say these are cons. These are just things you need to know going into it if you're, taking a thought about purchasing some equipment, investing in it. Environment is important. So these machines like humidity. Ideal is 55% plus. So we generally recommend on a pre-installation checklist we do with all of our clients, hey, you need to have your environment at least 55% sustainable before we're going to go in there and do the setup and installation. Anything lower than that, you're going to get dropout. It tends to dry out the print heads. These machines are moving so fast, and especially with the white ink, it tends to dry out and drop out. So humidity is important. So that's one thing you need to consider. Take a look at your shop and go, hey, am I able to control my humidity? What can I do? Can control that? We make a joke with a couple of our clients. They make a Dexter kill room. They dropped a bunch of Visqueen down, kind of walled it off of their warehouse, and now they have like a Amazon-like environment in there. They're running a couple humidifiers. So definitely take a look at that and make sure, hey, we can support this. Some places, go to Florida, it's muggy all the time. It's not really a concern. Maybe out here in Vegas and in this region, it's just dry. So we need to take that into consideration. Make sure we're going to be able to control the humidity. Most machines are not unintended printing, meaning I can't walk away from this for 4 hours and come back and expect it still to be printing. Not only is it dangerous because of the heating element, so if I wad a bunch of film up and it touches those bulbs, it can start to burn. So not a good situation, but also just in general, there's too many variables that can happen if I walk away for an extended period of time that I wouldn't want to walk away and leave. Oh, I guess Sean's going to join us now. Thanks for joining us, Sean. Um, so we're inching closer. I think with some advancements in this stuff between the duster and the printers, we're inching closer to, hey, it's an unintended printing, but it's not like a die sub machine. We have some die sub machines in our shop that I can walk away from for 8 hours and be comfortable. It's just not quite there. There's just too many moving pieces going through the oven. If it's tracking incorrectly, can get off track and create a bunch of issues. We got to monitor the powder and things like that. So mm, yeah. Yeah. He's got a loud voice, but let's get him a microphone up here if we would. Oh, yeah, we'll give him that one. Thank you, Mara. All right.
Trying to throw it.
Yeah. And then also mechanical aptitude. So what do I mean by that? You don't have to touch a button there, Sean. It was already on.
You can hear me?
Yeah. These guys are going to hate us by the end of this. They're like, oh my God, who are these people? So mechanical aptitude. If I don't have any digital printing experience, you got to be honest with yourself. Am I going to be able to do some basic maintenance and troubleshoot? If I don't have a technician standing over me, can I do some simple things like changing a damper and stuff like that? And if that's not really your skill set, maybe owning a piece of equipment is not for you, or maybe you can find somebody that does have that, or somebody on your staff does. So take a hard look at that. It's important. The shops that do execute DTF really, really well, they build up that skill set internally and can self-manage. Almost all of the tech support issues, I'd say 90+%, can be resolved with a simple phone call. That's also relying on the customer to be able to kind of walk through and troubleshoot some of those pain points. And the final thing is a clean printer is a happy printer. If we use and abuse this thing and we don't take care of it, you're going to have problems. It's just simple as that. So we want to be meticulous. So a good quality supplier is going to teach you those startup and shutdown procedures. What's your daily maintenance? What's your weekly maintenance? What's your monthly maintenance? All critical things to improving your print quality and consistency, but also the longevity of the machine and not having, I've got a 5,000 piece order I need to get out, and now I'm lying down because I didn't take care of my printer. All right, so this is a funny email here. So this is a real email from a real customer reach out to. And it kind of aligns with the theme here of, hey, why is the DTF a multi-tool of the tool shop? So this customer reached out to him and said, hey, I'm currently not in the market for a DTF machine. They are killing my industry. If you made a time machine so I could eradicate them from the face of the earth, I'd consider that as my next investment. Thanks for keeping in touch. And I definitely had to chuckle and share this because, I think that's the wrong mentality. What we try to teach you is cater to it, embrace it, get out in front of it. Yes, it is an existential threat to some people that don't want to change their ways, but any shop that does embellishment, whether it's a screen print, embroidery, DTG, die sub, you should take a strong look at this and say, why am I turning these customers away when I can bring this product either in-house or get a quality vendor that sells transfers and offer that to my customer? There's a lot of ways you can leverage it, and that's why we're saying the DTF is the multi-tool, and you should absolutely have it in your arsenal, whether you have it in-house or have a good quality source local or nationwide otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, you're running a risk when you say no to a customer, right? The tool that you have, some guy down the street probably has that same tool, but he also offers this. You may lose that customer for life because now they found that one-stop shop. So just another tool to add to your tool chest.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes here of the core case study. So this was based on a large on-demand contract manufacturer. So they do on-demand manufacturing for some of the big boys out there, and they do thousands of lines a day. Primarily soft goods, so your basic apparels, t-shirts and hoodies and sweatshirts. In 2022, prior to DTF, their manufacturing footprint, they had 150 DTG machines. So that's a $5.2 million investment. 35 flatbed UV machines, so that's 1.4 million, for a total investment of 6.65 million. So pretty substantial investment. Again, this is a huge manufacturer doing a ton of lines a day. 2024 footprint, they have 7 of our Gladiator 4-head DTF printing systems, so it's about a $245,000 investment. 7 heat press stations, so roughly in that $50,000 range, for a total investment of just under $300,000. So from an equipment investment standpoint, absolutely no comparison there. And this is a direct one-for-one replacement. So they no longer have DTG in-house. They offloaded all their machines and got rid of them. And they also got rid of all the 35 flatbed UVs. And we'll talk about that here in a second, why that application changed. They went from UV printing to DTF printing. So they've completely eliminated those 2 technologies and streamlined everything into one central technology with the DTF platform. So in 2022, typical production on a DTG machine, 500 to 600 impressions per operator per day. And this is a high skill operator. This particular client, a lot of their business starts ramping up Q3 and Q4 for the holiday season, online shopping, so they have to scale up and ramp up. They don't have the same workforce year round. So this would be a year round workforce employee that does it day in and day out, 365 days a year, high skill. When they bring in this temporary workforce, even despite training, they're only getting 200 to 300 impressions per day per operator. And that's with a 10 to 20% defect. Anybody that's ran a DTG machine, it can be a little difficult to get it to lay in there. And if you don't get it to lay in there flat or you have some pre-treat issues, you just damage the product. So they were getting over a 10 to 20% defect rate with those new employees and substantially less impressions per day. 2024 production with DTF, for one operator and one press operator, so this is basically any skill level, they can bring in an operator with 1 week of training, they're getting under a 2% defect in 1,000 impressions. So 2 people doing 1,000 impressions with a 4-head printing machine and a press. Pretty impressive paradigm shift from where they were 2 years ago to now. And then with the defect too, oftentimes with a transfer, you can identify, hey, there's a problem with this transfer before I put it on the finished product. With something like a DTG, I print on that shirt, it's garbage. So now I'm wasting $3, $4, $5 on that shirt and I have to throw it out. If I catch that transfer before I go ahead and put it in the heat press and transfer it to the finished product, I'm not wasting a shirt. So now I'm out a few pennies on the transfer and not throwing a $3 or $4 t-shirt away and wasting a product. Any clarifications on any of this so far? Okay. So they streamlined their production, so reducing application types. They went from DTG and UV down to DTF. So we talked about a little earlier with the sandals. Instead of UV printing those, they're now DTF printing on those sandals. All of their soft good products are now DTF as well. So t-shirts, hoodies, you name it, no longer DTG. Simplified employee training, reduced overall damage rate. They also have a lot of reduction in their customer complaints, meaning, hey, we shipped a product to a customer and then there was a defect downstream, so that customer received a product then complained about it. We could see a lot with the DTG sometimes is if it's pre-treated, so the pre-treat didn't go down right. We had some areas that didn't get the pre-treat. That ink could wash out, within one wash. So they saw a significant degradation in those types of complaints. And they're not getting that with the DTF, and especially on the washability and the color fastness. Complaints about the DTF feel, that was a common theme when this stuff was first coming out and still is. A lot of it's resolved by having the right recipe and also catering to the technology. So art prep techniques that say, hey, this is the best way to use the DTF technology, and combining that with the right recipe and the finished application can make a really great product that, let's be honest, the end user isn't going to know what this is. They don't really care. If I'm somebody off the street buying a shirt, all I care is that, hey, it looks cool, feels great. I don't really care what technology it is. This also allowed 2 to 3 times daily output with the same staff. So they almost tripled their output with the same staff. And then even more importantly, anyone that owns a facility, space. They reduced 50% of their manufacturing footprint from 2022 to 2024 by switching to DTF. Okay. All right, so we're going to do some cost analysis here. I'm going to take a swig of water from my gallon jug that I always carry around with me here. Everybody always makes fun of me about it. Okay, so cost analysis here. And actually, while we're doing this, I'm going to hold up this t-shirt. So this is a great example of the right recipe and also catering to the technology. So good artwork preparation and then following the formula. So you can pass that around, feel it. And this is the exact artwork that we're going to be talking about here from a cost breakdown. So this design is 10.5 by 13.75. So that comes out to exactly 1 square foot. Let's talk about the ink cost. So cyan, magenta, white, yellow, and black. I've got our average costs in here, to break out the individual ink usage on this particular design. It came out to be about 5 cents. 5 cents to print that design with a combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and white. From a film cost standpoint, we have a typical length of film is 323 feet. So let's just say an average retail cost is $175 a roll. Your cost per square foot is going to be 27 cents. Then we factor in the powder. We see a typical average of pound per roll, about 1.75. So just under 2 pounds per roll of printed DTF transfers. We're using, so the $18.75 per pound, we're using 5 cents per square foot. Total material cost, 32 cents. So you can see where I'm going with this. 32 cents in material, 5 cents in ink. So we're at 37 cents for this piece of artwork here printed onto that t-shirt. So further cost analysis, so same reference artwork here. Let's break down actually, not just the material and ink cost, but what does it cost for me to run this machine? And we have to have labor to print it, right? We talked about it's not unattended printing, so there has to be an operator there. So let's just say we're using a machine that's 204 square feet an hour. So that's roughly what our Gladiator output is. It's a 4-head machine. So roughly 204 square foot an hour at $25 an hour. So if we're paying our operator, let's say 25 bucks an hour, at 204, it's going to come out to 12 cents in labor per square foot. So now we're at 37 cents for total ink and material cost and 12 cents for a total print labor. And then remember, this isn't pressing yet. This is just strictly material and printing labor. So our printed transfer before we transfer it to the substrate is 50 cents. And that's that exact design that we're sending around there cost us 50 cents. So total times 100, 49.61. 50 cents was actually a little bit of a roundup. That's why it doesn't come out to an even 50. So your press operator capacity per hour. So we see good shops get anywhere from 100 to 125 an hour on average, with a press labor of $20. So our press cost is going to be 16 cents per press. So our total cost, let's just say in a simulated work environment, of 100 printed and pressed single-sided DTF t-shirts plus a 15% contingency is going to cost us roughly $75.46. This, of course, is not including the cost of the blank. And then if you want to get real technical for any of you, accountants out there, this is gross, right? We're not talking about overhead, wear and tear on the machine, startup and shutdown, those types of things, some of your other indirect costs. This is just strictly rough math on your print and transfer and your press labor. Any thoughts or comments on that? And I didn't want to, come up here again and do a bunch of analysis like his other technologies, but I think if you go out there and look and do some research as, how economical this is compared to some of the other digital technologies, this is extremely compelling. I can basically have a 20 by 20 footprint with a high quality machine and a couple presses, and for $75.46, I can do 100 high quality DTF single sided T-shirts. And as you pass it around, I think you can agree that the feel and color is outstanding on that shirt. So to cap this off, we'll finish it out by saying, hey, going back to that email, right? It is a threat to large decorators if they don't embrace the technology. The biggest thing now is that the small swag shop can compete with some of these big boys because the technology is super accessible. It's completely digital. It's a moderately low threshold for an investment standpoint. Anywhere from just under 20,000 to mid to upper 40,000s. And you can have a really high quality machine. The heat presses are pretty economical as well. A couple $1,000s will get you a high quality heat press. So it's very affordable for a small business to get into this. It's a compact footprint, has a great ease of application. You saw how easy it was in the video. 12 seconds in a heat press. In case in point with the case study, they can bring somebody in and they can basically master it in under a week. And also the machines themselves have an extremely high output speed. So 204 square foot an hour, we could do 200 of those designs printed out of the machine. So if I can instill you with anything walking away from here is don't fear the change, embrace it. Find a way to utilize that technology, integrate it into your sales portfolio, and don't turn that business away. To cap it off, not everyone is, like we talked about, right? If you're being, honest with your operation where you're at, not everyone needs to have the equipment. Find a high quality transfer source. And then maybe the step 2 is once we build that book of business and we're really doing a lot, we're buying these transfers, let's save some money, bring it in-house. Then maybe it's time to make an investment in the DTF equipment. So leverage the positives, cater to the technology. It's not a one-shop stop that fits everything. So you definitely want to consider, hey, what is my core market? And we feel that the DTF probably checks almost all the boxes, but there are certain fringe uses that maybe it isn't the right technology, but look at your business, say, hey, what am I truly going after? And this is probably the single best tool you could have.
Yeah, and I'll also say you want to recognize this technology it was in its infancy. It is growing up now. We've got a 9-color now with extended gamut. If you've got CMYK, you got Bob Ross painting happy trees. If he has CMYK, he doesn't have all that gamut to print all those trees and all those colors. You add red, green, blue, orange. Now your gamut goes like this. You've got a much bigger color gamut. So as a digital process, it's going to continue to evolve. We've got a machine that will allow us to do fluorescence. We've got in the booth, we've got a 9-color machine with a huge extended gamut. We've got tools like spectrophotometers. If you've got Coca-Cola come to you, they've got Coca-Cola Red. They've got a big wallet. They have the tools to read that color. If you can't give them that color, you don't get in their wallet. You need the right tools to get there. Coca-Cola comes to you, get the right tool, get their business. It'll be game-changing and life-changing if Coca-Cola opens their wallet, right? So all the tools are there and it's growing up. The digital technology is coming to where we want it. That's why direct-to-film, in my opinion, is by far and away the best digital technology and does bridge the gap between the mechanical screen print process and the digital process of creating transfers.
Amen. All right, so cap it off, invest in your success with DTF, and of course, a sales pitch. Come talk to us. We'd be happy to educate you on anything. More than anything, I'm an abundance of knowledge along with the whole team. Happy to help with answer any questions afterwards. We're just right over here. Yeah, I think you were asking the difference in price between like a DTG print versus a DTF. UV DTF. Okay, great question. Yeah, we didn't even really get into the UV DTF. Maybe I can hit the high points on that in case anybody doesn't know what UV DTF is. So it's still a direct-to-film technology, but it's a UV printed ink. And what does that mean? It's actually UV cured. So instead of using a heat and a powder to cure this, we're actually using UV lamps to cure the ink. So it's reactive to the UV light, and that's what cures and hardens it. So this product is still getting printed to a transfer sheet, but it's a little bit different. It's a paper that has a glue on it, and it's a heat activated glue. So we're going to put down our white underbase, put our colors down, and then we're going to put a varnish on top of it. It's going to go through the laminator and get activated, and then a lamination on top. So now we have a transfer that has an A side and a B side. The A side has the glue, and the B side is just simply a transfer sheet. So we're going to peel that transfer sheet off, and we're going to stick it on hard goods or semi-rigid. It's not an apparel product. It's not a soft good product. It's a hard good product. So cups, mugs, phone cases, things like that. Hard hats. You can do a lot of really cool things with it. Bumper stickers, windows. Super durable as well because it's a UV cured ink with a varnish over top of it. Now, to answer your question, the cost is about double. So if we're saying we're in that 50 cents material range, you're going to be closer to that $1 to $1.50 depending on what you're doing. It is a little more expensive, but it is a premium product. And most of the time, the designs are really small. So you can fit a lot in a square foot. Usually they're 2x2, 3x3 type things. So even though it is more expensive per square foot, the actual margin is higher on that product.
I guess I'm just wondering. I've never done DTF or DTG. We're in print finishing, but we're interested because we've got print shops as customers and books are dying. I'm just wondering if DTF superseded DTG in the course of 2 years. Is there something in the queue that we don't know about yet, or maybe we do, that's going to supersede it, or is this something that's going to be continue to be developed?
Yeah, it's crazy. This is 4 to 5 year old, really mainstream technology that's grown and evolved in such a short amount of time and really just changed the whole landscape. And it's going to continue to explode for some time, and we're going to continue to get better with certain things, better films, powders, and inks. Faster equipment, expanded gamut. We firmly believe that's where the industry needs to go: is better color accuracy, more color availability than just a simple CMYK. So that's why we're leaning into that. I'm just as American as anyone. Big V8 motor is better. We can go faster. I think the answer is not throwing more print heads at it to go faster. I think it's better color accuracy and better quality transfer. I think that's where the market needs to go. Um, Also on top of that, I don't have any line of sight to anything that's going to supplant this. Sure, there's probably stuff in the works, a few years out, but as of right now, I don't see anything really pushing away from the current DTF process. Maybe we could look at films that are paper-based instead of plastic, PET, things like that. But I still think DTF's here to stay for a very long time. All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.